I'm not sure why we have sheets like this. I guess something wrong within the church.
Finish writes and rewrites and
So we have it set up like this.
Well,
But I guess this will.
I don't know that it would be rewrites, it would maybe be readings. There'd be a lot of.
Oh, here you go. You guys should gab over there. Tom, we were admiring your setup. Proceed.
You're welcome.
Way to go. We appreciate it. All right. Well, welcome. Here we go. We've got things to do, places to go. Let's pray. Father, thank you for the day, for your grace, for your gift to us of eternal life. We thank you for that. We pray that, Lord, this morning, that your Spirit who indwells us would illuminate truth to us, and that we would live in a way that pleases you. Help us try to discern what that is through the writings that Paul has given to us this morning. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Well, we are back in Ephesians after our brief week off for 4th of July. Everybody have fun?
Yes,
Very safe. Everybody got all their digits? I'm playing with firecrackers. So we're back in chapter 5 of Ephesians, and of course, you remember we're talking about, Paul's talking about the church at Ephesus, or a group, a region around Ephesus. And he wants them to understand who they are. He wants them to understand what to do in life, who they are. He wants them to understand their new position. He wants them to understand their new practice. So we've moved into the practical, the practice orientation. And Paul wants these people to live in a way that pleases the Lord. Right? We've seen that. He wants us to live in a way that brings glory to him. One of the reasons is because if the Ephesians start living the way they used to be, Paul says to them that they will not inherit the kingdom of God. And I take that as a reward passage. Paul is exhorting his people to live right for a variety of reasons, but one of the reasons is because if you don't, when you stand before the Lord, he is going to evaluate how you live. And he's going to reward you accordingly. So this is Paul's, what we call bema seat theology. Bema seat, simply the word for judgment. Judgment seat. So believers will stand before the Lord. He will evaluate our life as we then go to serve him and glorify him in all eternity. Pat Booth has already entered that sphere. And, Pat liked to talk, didn't he? Tell you everybody he knew. Well, maybe for the first time in his life, he will be listening. He's going to tell him everything that he did, and he'll smile if he did. So that's good. At any rate, I never met Pat before here. He's a very interesting guy. He seems to know every human on the earth. But amazing. So we're in chapter 5. And we're going to pick it up in verse 15. And it starts with that word, therefore. And the therefore is therefore because he's drawing an inference, a conclusion. He wants a response. He wants them to do something. He says, arise, O sleeper. And remember the word sleeper right before it is the word for moral lethargy. It's not I went to sleep. It's you are morally lethargic. He says, wake up and let Christ shine on you. And the shining element's keyed and tied into the whole idea of walking in the light, walking in wisdom, walking in those things that bring glory to God. So, Paul's now going to get us to the walking in the wisdom side of things. So, we're in verse 15. He says, therefore, be careful how you walk, not as unwise men, but as wise, making the most of your time because the days are evil. So, we have an interesting sentence there. You think it's safe, but it's not safe. My version says, as I just read, therefore be careful how you walk. You see that? Mm-hmm. Be careful how you walk. Now there are a number of translations. Some of them don't even mention the actual word that is there. The New King James has it perhaps the most accurate. It says, see then that you walk circumspectly. Paul's exhorting them with a word, an adverb, circumspectly. Carefully walk. Check out how you walk. Do you do that, by the way? You get up in the morning, you have your frosted flakes, your corn flakes, your Toast Toasties, whatever, you brush your teeth, you go to work, you do this, you do whatever. But Paul said, when you do all that, that's fine, but you need to be very circumspect about how you live. Do you do that? You know? Or do we just kind of have a habit and a pattern, we get up, we do our thing, we jog, we look, we boom, we go off to work, and all of a sudden it's whatever. Paul says, hey, we need to walk circumspectly. The Christian Standard Bible says, pay careful attention then to how you walk. So it's focused. Every day, every minute should be focused on how you live, how you walk. Well, how do I do that? Well, he says, not as unwise men, but as wise men. So the question becomes, are we walking not wise, or are we wise? Paul just uses the same word and puts an A in front of it to negate it. The question is, are you walking with Sophia, wisdom, or not? I imagine if you're like me, your day is filled with some good ones and some bad ones. Some good minutes, some bad minutes. Some days and some hours where you do the right thing, some days and hours you do the wrong thing. Paul says at least be circumspect on how you live and how you walk. Now most Christians don't do this. They just live. They just do their thing. They just kind of emote and feel and be busy and talk and whatever. And Paul says that's not how we're supposed to live. We're supposed to live circumspectly. We're supposed to walk carefully. We're supposed to think through how we live our day. How? Wisely, not unwisely.
Dr. Don Campbell taught this passage.
The Don Campbell?
Yeah. And he used the example of a person in war walking across a field that had been planted with mines.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that's what walking, you watch where you put your foot, and then your next foot.
You look and see what's there before you put your foot down, and then you get there. Exactly. Now you go slower that way, but you don't get blown up. Yeah. So Paul wants us to be very careful, and especially in this world. I mean, Paul's world was a mess too, but in our world, we've got to look and be careful when we walk. I used to always tell my kids, trust no one. That sounds a little half empty with the glass. My glass is not only half empty, there's a hole in it, so I mean, we always drink. You got to be careful these days. Ralph.
Adding on to what Martha said, because I see it about 150 times a day, you can't do that with a cell phone. People like me, they run into me, they run into people with their cell phone, they're walking around like
Yeah, and they're not looking where they're
not
going.
looking
Yeah.
anywhere where they're going. I mean, it's amazing.
If you're lucky to get hit by a car. But, so we need to be careful, we need to be wise, we need to not be unwise. In fact, this is essentially what Paul said in chapter 5, verse 1. Remember what he said there, how he started this? Therefore be mimics, right? Imitators. Be imitators of God as beloved children. So if we're going to imitate God, if we're going to mimic God, we have to be circumspect in how we walk, which means we got to walk wisely or with wisdom. So this is a challenge, I think, every day. And of course, one reason to do that is because if you don't inherit the kingdom of God. Now look at verse 16. Here's another way of how we and why we do this. Making the most of your time because the days are evil. Ooh, now that puts a focal point on it, right? Why walk circumspectly? Why do this? Because the days are evil, therefore we better redeem the time. I don't know if your translation puts that in there, but it's the idea of redemption, the idea of buying back. It's the idea of buying something out of the marketplace. Okay, so you have a word here, agora, means marketplace. Agorazo is to buy or purchase from the market, and in this case, the slave market. Here's our word, buy out of the market. Paul says, I want you to buy back the time that you have on earth. Redeem it. Redeem it. We've been redeemed. We're supposed to redeem the time that God has given to us on earth. That's called walking circumspectly. That's called mimicking Christ. That's called pleasing the Lord. So what Paul wants is for us to do what Psalm 90 said, Lord, teach us to number our days that we might present to you a heart of wisdom. Remember that verse? Teach us to number our days, Moses said, that we might present to you a heart of wisdom. Do you live this way? Or is it just carefree, free float, whatever? Obviously, millennials, younger people, they tend to live that way. And we get that. They're young and they're energetic and whatever. But Paul would say, listen, here's a little bit of a different take on life. Be careful. Follow and mimic Christ. Walk circumspectly. Be wise. Don't be unwise. Why? Because the day you're living in, Paul's day, absolutely. Our day, absolutely. The days you're living in are wicked.
I know weeks from now, when I look at this again, I'm going to not understand what B2 is saying on
B2.
the outline.
Be wise, not unwise?
No, redeem or buy back is a principle of manner and in the middle voice.
Oh, yes. Principle of manner. The manner of operating is you're to redeeming the time you're supposed to. This is how you're supposed to act. This is the manner in which you act.
And what does in the middle voice mean?
Middle voice means you are doing it to yourself. Instead of an active or a passive voice verb, it's a middle voice, which we don't have this in English. It means redeem the time yourself. Be personally involved in the process. It's just a grammatical way of making it even more emphatic. I'm not supposed to wait for you to help me redeem the time. I'm supposed to engage in the redeeming of the time. Personally involved with it. So this is called intentional living. And the reason we need to be intentional like this is because if we are not, if we don't redeem the time, we're probably going to be taken in by the evil ways of this world. And Paul obviously doesn't want that. So we're living in these evil days. During this time, the quality of life is one word, kairos. The quantity of life is chronos. Paul gives us a couple of words a couple of times. But the bottom line is, the devil is running the world, right? Remember, Paul later is going to tell us that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against powers and spiritual forces. That makes the world even more evil. So we need to live circumspectly in the midst of our time on earth. You say, well, gosh, Paul's kind of fanatical. He wants every hour of my life controlled. Yeah. He wants spirit-controlled temperament. Well, Tim LaHaye's book of 4 years ago. The days are evil. Paul's used this word, paniros or paniru, morally or socially evil. He's used this word before. Let there be no evil spoken amongst you. Right? He's used this word before. He's warned us about this. We're living in a society very similar to Paul's. It is a sensual society. It is a wealthy society. It is a society that has lost its mores. It's lost its, shall we say, religious connection. The United States of America started one way. We're not there anymore. We've lost the focus from a Christian perspective, and things are running down. And here we are as believers in the middle of it. And Paul says, I'm not saying run away from the world. I'm saying live in it circumspectly.
This is not quite to the point that you're talking about. I heard on the news that the socialist part of the Democratic Party said that Christians are socialists. He quoted a sentence, which I didn't want to.
Yeah, some people would look at the book of Acts and say the early church were socialists, right? Why? Well, because they have all things in common. They stole their stuff and they have all things in common. And therefore they say, oh, they were communists. Okay, not true. They had what they should have been called is communism. Not communism, commonism. They had all things in common. That's what it actually says. And that's what they did. Now, it wasn't that they had a centralized government that everybody had to give to that. That wasn't at all. People just, oh, you're hungry? Here, have some of mine. Oh, you don't have where to sleep? Sleep here with, in our house. That's what they did. They had all things in common. That's not centralized government, socialistic communism of certain congresswomen.
Well, that's, I think.
The key thing is voluntary.
Pardon me?
I think that's what this group is going to try to do.
Well, sure, they want to make Christianity, I mean, they use whatever they can to get whatever it is they want.
To me, you know, what we're talking about, 2,000 years since this is written.
Yeah.
Wouldn't, or didn't every generation think the same thought? That every generation was evil? And the incredible thing that Paul wrote this, and it applies to all things.
Yeah, I think it's probably safe to say that ever since the fall, the days are evil. They just take on a different manifestation
Looks different.
of evil. It just looks different. But the devil's got a limited playbook. He does the same stuff. He just does it over and over and over again.
The key thing with the socialists is they are compassionate with other people's resources as opposed to voluntarily. For example, Ralph brings food for us every single Friday.
That's communistic.
That's committed.
And we have all these things in common.
And he does it voluntarily. He's not you don't mandate him, say you can't come to this class unless you bring food.
Well, I built a little.
But that is
Meritocracy.
that is absolutely the difference between being compassionate with somebody else's resources, which is what liberals do, which is what socialists do. Incidentally, socialism is the ownership of private property. There's no private property. I don't see anything in the New Testament that talks about that. There may be, but
In the Old Testament, you had a kind of a theocracy, and then every 7 years you forgave debts and you gave back stuff, and so there was a number of things there. But that was a different society. That was a theocracy, and certain laws applied. And so I wouldn't take that system and say that's what we're supposed to operate on. The church doesn't seem to articulate a communistic mindset. Although back in the early 70s, when Christianity was, the Jesus movement in California and all that kind of stuff, which was kind of interesting, you found a lot of Christian communes popping up. And people kind of wanted to get away from the mess, and so they went and started a Christian commune. And I think some of them actually still exist. One of them is very large in Georgia. But I'm not saying that's the way to do it, but that was one group of Christians' way of trying to figure out how to get away from the world. Paul's not saying go run away from the world. He's just saying you're in the world, the days are evil. Let's make sure you live wisely. Let's make sure you walk circumspectly. Let's make sure you're dedicated to the Lord. Let's make sure you're trying to learn what is pleasing to Him. That's His hope. That's His goal for us. But it is a wicked world that we live in. But Paul tells us that a little bit later, right? Not against flesh and blood, but rulers and powers and world forces of this darkness, spiritual forces. That's where the war really is. So Paul says, walk circumspectly. Understand where the landmine is. And take a look, and before you stick your foot down, make sure that's safe. Right? You may go slower, but you may live longer if you do that. Lewis put it well. He said, every square inch of the universe is claimed by God and counterclaimed by Satan. Now, do you believe that? I believe that. I think that's true. We have a war of the worlds going on. Right? That's what's going on here. The devil is trying to claim earth, and God has claimed it back. And He has now redeemed His people, and one day He will come back for His people, and then He will set up His kingdom, and all sorts of things are happening. But until then, well, we happen to be in a warlike state, unfortunately. So how do we respond to this? Verse 17, so that you are foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. Understand what the will of the Lord is. So when you get up in the morning, you say, Lord, I want to understand your will today. That's a good way to start. But it needs to become even more specific. So now I have this opportunity before me. I have this option. Lord, I need to understand your will on this. Should I really do this or should I not? Now, I'm not talking about picking parking places. Lord, this one, oh no, this is bigger. No. Although some people live like that. But when we come to decisions like, okay, so my kid overreacts, he does this, Lord, I want to do your will. I want to do what's pleasing to you. How do I respond to him in this situation? What should I do in this situation? I've been asked to do this and this and this. What should I do in this situation? All of that discussion going on up here, that is all trying to find what's pleasing to the Lord. It's also partly walking circumspectly. Now, all of us, I imagine, have places and points in our life where we have not walked circumspectly, and we have lived to tell about it. Right? And you wish, if only I could have done it this way, if only I would have done it this way, but I didn't. So you can't go back and you can't live in the past. But what you can do is say, Lord, today I want to live circumspectly. Today I want to live wisely, not unwise. Now, if you don't want to do that, you don't have to. But don't blame anybody when things go wrong. Paul's saying, from jail, by the way, so he's not writing, from the Ritz. He's writing from the jail. Didn't have room service, didn't have good food, didn't have much of anything. But he says, listen, wherever you are, you need to walk circumspectly, live wisely, and figure out what the will of the Lord is. So, don't be foolish, which some people are. Don't be foolish, but instead, understand. Imperative. Don't be foolish. Comprehend. Realize. Understand what the will of the Lord is, which sounds a lot like what he said in 5:10, learn to be pleasing to the Lord. Paul's just repeating himself. Be imitators of God. Learn how to be pleasing to God. Understand what the will of the Lord is. If you do that, you'll be wise and you won't be foolish. So, do you want to be wise? Do you want to please the Lord? You want to do what he wants you to do? That's all Paul's saying. Well, how are we going to do that? How do we do that? We go get some book. We go to some